Hey everybody, I'm Damon Garcia, and on this channel we talk about the intersection between Christianity and leftist politics. So subscribe if you haven't already for more of that. But today we're going to lean pretty heavily on the Christianity stuff. The inner preacher deep within me is here today, and we're going to talk about something that's very important to me, something that everybody out there needs to know, all you Christians in particular, and that is your privilege is not a sign of God's blessing on your life. Let's talk about it. Now, I may be talking about you in this video, and if that's so, keep watching. I promise I'm not too mean. And I may be talking about someone you know. I'm sure we've all seen this talk of God's blessings over our lives, or at least have seen posts with #blessed attached to it. Of course, I grew up in an environment where God's providence over our lives was constantly alluded to in the evangelical environment I grew up in, particularly Pentecostal type of evangelicalism. I'm out of that now, but it's still constantly around me. I see it from all my old friends, from certain family members, this general constantly looking for signs of God's blessings. And I also realize even the brand of Christianity I grew up with actually has its roots more attached to the New Thought movement from the 19th century and not as attached to the first century as we were necessarily told it was. And a lot of this New Thought movement also led to what we also know as New Age movement, which is also constantly looking for signs everywhere of how the universe is speaking to me, or angels, or spirit guides, or past lives, stuff like that. Now, this kind of spiritual thinking makes sense to rise up in our capitalist individualistic society, where we're told that every problem you have is because of your fault alone, and every success you have is because of only your effort alone. And so we're constantly anxious, looking for signs everywhere that we're doing okay, even to the metaphysical realm. Now, that's not the kind of spirituality I engage in now, and we'll get to how I talk about this stuff now in a bit, but I do very much still value gratitude, the spiritual value and practice of gratitude. I have a video on here, Gratitude for Leftists, if you want to see a little bit more on that. But there's a type of gratitude that I don't really find all that helpful. And it's the type of spiritual gratitude that mistakes our privileges for blessings. Here's kind of an interesting example in a screenshot of a Facebook post I saw one time where they said, "I just wanted to take the time to thank God for keeping me safe in the past year. I've had 3 car crashes, 7 surgeries resulted in me dying in between, being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and going into deep depression because of it, being in an abusive and toxic relationship, being in and out of the hospital due to organ failures and near death due to my diagnosis. And most of all, I want to thank my mother, my sister, my stepdad, my brothers, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my suegra, and my boyfriend for being my main supporters through everything." Heart, prayer emoji, 100 emoji. Actually, when I first saw this, I saw somebody comment on the screenshot saying, I think actually God's trying to kill you. That's pretty heavy. You've been through a lot. But one of the things that comes to my mind when I see a post like this is, dang, this person better be super thankful for health insurance. I don't know how anyone could afford all of that, and a lot of people can't. A lot of people don't experience the privileges that certain people do in America today, and people who are experiencing these privileges, particularly somewhat middle to upper class white people, don't realize that not that many people are experiencing the blessings that they think is just the norm. Especially the ultra-rich who think that they're only there completely by their own effort and don't understand why everyone's critiquing the system. They're like, everything's fine. I don't know why anybody has a problem with anything. God blessed me. You just do what I do and God will bless you too. Kind of reminds me of this meme that I came across that I really love. The sinking ship of global capitalism, but those who are on top are like, if we're sinking, why are we hundreds of feet up in the air? I think that's a pretty good illustration of privilege right there. Also, you have to take a step back and realize the reason America is so rich and successful, as we call it, is because of its historical exploitation of the forced removal of the indigenous people and stealing all the resources and land, and the slavery and cheap labor of immigrants that built this country, and the continual exploitation of foreign lands and the constant repression of minorities in this country. a lot of that is what people experience the benefits of and then say, look how much God has blessed me. You got to realize what we're talking about here. Around 8.6% of people in the world are living in extreme poverty right now. And I'm sure they're all praying to God for some way out. And America only makes up about 4% of the world. And a third of Americans are living in or near poverty. So only about 2.5% of the world are living that good #blessed life of success, happiness, and wealth provided through God's blessings. So either there's a God somewhere out there who chooses to bless barely anybody on this planet, or we got our theology wrong somewhere along the way. Like I said, a lot of this thinking has to do with our capitalist individualistic society, but it has its roots in a big component that gave rise to capitalism, which is the Protestant work ethic. This is a term coined by Max Weber in 1904, and he noticed how within the theology of Calvinism was the doctrine of predestination, even double predestination, which is the belief that God has chosen his special Christians who were destined to end up in heaven beyond any will of their own, and everyone else destined for hell for all of eternity beyond any will of their own. And we're just chugging along. It's like everything is already decided and you got to figure out if you're one of the chosen or not. And one of the signs that you are part of this chosen group is wealth, is success in the capitalist system. Wealth and success quickly became a way that these Christians knew that they were that they were blessed by this God. Also a super individualistic way of doing theology, and Calvinism is basically BS. Come at me if you want to talk more about that. Actually don't, it'll be a totally waste of my time and energy, anybody's time and energy. But let's actually look at what the Bible even says, because the Bible seems to talk about blessings in a completely different way than we understand it, which is completely influenced by the Protestant work ethic. More importantly, let's look at what Jesus the man says about this. Luke 6:20, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh." Jesus doesn't seem to think that the people who have wealth and success in their lives are the ones who are blessed, but literally the exact opposite. The people who are poor are the ones who are blessed. Well, let's see what he says about the people who do have wealth and success in their lives. He says, "But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you will be hungry. Woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep." What? Let's look at what James 5 says. By the way, this passage I'm about to read is also, I know, the favorite passage of a couple people who watch my videos. It's great. Where he says, "Come now, you rich people, weep and wail for the miseries that are coming to you. Your riches have rotted and your clothes are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have rusted, and their rust will be evidence against you, and it will eat your flesh like fire. You have laid up treasure for the last days. Listen, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, cry out, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on the earth in luxury and in pleasure. You have fattened your hearts on a day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous one who does not resist you." Actually, just for fun, let's look at what the Message translation says for James 5. You know, the Message, the so easy to understand that it's almost heresy translation of the Bible. They say, "And a final word to you arrogant rich. Take some lessons in lament. You'll need buckets for the tears when the crash comes upon you. Your money is corrupt and your fine clothes stink. Your greedy luxuries are a cancer in your gut, destroying your life from within. You thought you were piling up wealth. What you've piled up is judgment. All the workers you've exploited and cheated cry out for judgment. The groans of the workers you used and abused are a roar in the ears of the master avenger. You've looted the earth and lived it up, but all you'll have to show for it is a fatter than usual corpse." Fantastic. In fact, what you've done is condemn and murder perfectly good persons who stand there and take it. How many of you out there are like, "Oh, snap. Maybe I should read the Bible"? It's not all like that, but there's a lot of bits in there that are like that. But what does it mean that the poor are the ones who are actually blessed by God? Many scholars of the Bible would say that that word for blessed is kind of a first century way of saying God is on your side. Even a lot of the blessings that occur in the Old Testament, usually from a father to a son, wasn't the father giving their son anything. That was a separate thing. That was inheritance stuff. The blessing was a word of affirmation. It was showing that I fully support you and I am on your side, always. Believe it or not, the Bible reveals a God that chooses the side of the poor and the oppressed, or as Jesus calls them, the least of these, always. Even John Calvin himself said stuff similar to this. I'm sure Calvinists wouldn't say this, but Calvin said, God is indeed no respecter of persons. Calvinists would definitely say that, and God doesn't respect anybody. But then he says, but it is not without cause that God takes a more special care of the poor than of others, since they are most exposed to injuries and violence. That reminds me, even when Jesus tells the parable of judgment and separating the sheep and the goats, he judges one group and tells them, you did not take care of the least of these. And he tells the other one, you did take care of the least of these. But then he doesn't turn to the least of these and judge them. The least of these apparently are already taken care of, are already in. And the rest of us get judged for how we treat the least of these. That seems to be what's going on here with the Bible and judgment and God and all this whole thing. And I personally believe judgment is something that's just constantly happening throughout life and literal history, not necessarily something that happens in this other realm in the future, but that's for other videos. I've talked about it before. I see the Jesus story as Jesus living this kind of life, fully committed to the poor and the oppressed, and then he leaves and he's like, continue this work. And the poor and the oppressed is where you'll find me, not within riches and wealth. So the poor are actually the ones who are blessed if we're using the biblical understanding of blessed. And that is actually where God is to be found. Or as James Cone put it, God is the one whom the people have met in the historical struggle of freedom. That's what it means to say yes to this whole Jesus stuff, to choose the side of the poor and the oppressed and join in with them for the struggle for freedom. As MLK famously said, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And Jesus was our visible exemplar of that arc, that people like me choose to follow. And that goes beyond labels like Christian or certain beliefs or religious values, stuff like that. It's about how you live your life. And I affirm everyone on their own journeys, whether they're Christian or not, who choose the side of the poor and the oppressed in the struggle for freedom. I see us all on the same mission. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this. Follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/whoisdamon, where we stream every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Also, I would greatly appreciate it if you want to show some support for this channel. Go become a patron on patreon.com/Damon Garcia. I would greatly appreciate it. And shout out to my patrons already there: Karen in Colorado, Ranger Jenny, Refined Your Scene, James Finlay, New Transcendentalist, Kristen Mouse, Mike Talkman, Peter John Blake, Mimi McGann, Rob Hutton, Jack, Callie, Theory Plebe, Jacob McCarthy, Mike Lodato, Frank Morales, Socialist Sangha, They Were Monsters, and Julianne King. Thank you all, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.